that goes with them. Few know better than the general the value of the morale of a fighting force on which high command decisions must be based when he confers with his military and civilian advisors on the future course of the war. Still basing his war plans on an expansion of South Korean forces, he visits a cracked division of rocks on a snow-capped ridge, where he is greeted by President Syngman Rhee. President Rhee has assured the future President of the United States that his country is eager to assume the major burden of its defense. Modernization of Korean equipment and training courses is one of the main objectives of the general's plans. The ROK soldiers have already proven themselves on Sniper Ridge, and now for the benefit of the high command, they put on an impressive exercise. After the maneuvers, General Eisenhower congratulated President Rhee on the performance of his troops. He thanks the President for the Korean flag, which will eventually be displayed in the White House, memento of an historic mission. Meanwhile, the tidings of Eisenhower's presence draw an estimated 500,000 onto the streets of Seoul. A crowded schedule prevents the president-elect from attending the demonstration, and the vast throng is naturally disappointed. But the mere fact of Ike's visit raises the hopes of this war-ravaged people for the future. At the conclusion of his fateful three-day tour, 8th Army Headquarters is the scene of a much-anticipated press conference. 125 correspondents gather in the war room to hear his summation. As incoming Attorney General Herbert Brownell and other advisors look on, the general tells of his success in gathering first-hand information and ends with a message of hope.
As I stated publicly long before we came over here, we came over to learn. We had no panaceas, no trick ways of settling any problems. We came over here to get a grasp of the feeling in this part of the world, a look at the situation, and a better understanding of many factors that will be important to my associates and myself and to everybody here during the months to come. Much can be done, in my opinion, to improve our position. Much will be done. I think that I'm going to end this little talk with paying again a different kind of a tribute to the Korean nation. It is in terms of confidence in what I believe they can do with intelligent help given not only for their preservation, but in realization again, as I say, of that principle that freedom is an indivisible thing. I am far from a defeatist on this business because I passionately believe that freedom represents a course of life that men prefer to communism and slavery. Therefore, I believe that on this particular corner, this particular phase of this great struggle between these two ideologies, freedom is bound to be successful.
In Korea, General Maxwell D. Taylor, new 8th Army Chief, tours his command area and inspects ROK troops undergoing the stepped-up program for putting more South Korean divisions into the field, easing the load on U.S. manpower. Captured enemy equipment is on display here for training purposes. The general gets a good close look at the weapons of the enemy. Then a quick flight to an area of key significance, Koji Prison Island, a propaganda hotspot, and often a hotspot for the men who guard rebellious communist PWs. It's a reminder to the general that this theater of action is the scene of a grim political war, every bit as important as the bitter front-line fighting.
In March 1953, the communist world was shaken by the death of Joseph Stalin. His successor, Georgy Malenkov, launched what he termed a worldwide peace offensive. Its influence would soon be felt in Korea. Within a month, the communists suddenly took us up on our standing offer to exchange sick and wounded prisoners. This was Operation Little Switch. It indicated that a ceasefire might come soon.
Convoys pass on a Korean road. One carries Reds to an unknown fate, the other United Nations men to freedom. As the exchange machinery gathers momentum, Red officers come forward to deliver another consignment of UN prisoners to the custody of Allied officials, a total of 684. From then on, Red ambulances disgorge the stark proof of man's inhumanity to man. Here are the barely living products of malnutrition, cruelty, neglect, disease. Bearing the marks of the twilight world that was imprisonment by the communists, they arrive in a grotesque array of clothing. Members of South Korean armies are taken to their own processing unit, and the story of barbarism and brutality is told again, as dazed and mutilated men grimly await the ministrations of shocked medical officers. One of the bright spots in the grim business is the road back to self-respect, dignity, and the feeling of once again belonging to the race of free men after months of a nightmarish existence. The blessed consolation of religion again is theirs. At a crossroads of history, they take their first faltering steps on the road home. Getting acquainted with civilized food again can be one of life's great adventures, when near starvation has been a constant companion. Even as these fortunate ones turn their steps homeward, thousands of others remain to an unknown fate, and further truce talks hang by slender threads. But for those who can smile again, all America is thankful. As truce talks continue in Korea, the United Nations Command takes no chances on Red stalling at Panmunjom to mask a military buildup behind the lines. Intensive fighter bomber raids are launched at Red communication lines and supply depots. Defense Department films show a group of U.S. Thunderjets in a sortie deep into North Korea, raking a path of destruction along key supply routes. They pounce on a Red vehicle caught in the open. Quarter-ton bombs rain down on a communist supply dump. Another incident in a round-the-clock assault. It won't end until there's a truce in Korea.
Near-zero temperatures ice the decks of the aircraft carrier Oriskany somewhere in Korean waters. But winter weather doesn't stand in the way of the Navy's air offensive against Red installations. Neither rain nor snow keeps these airmen from their appointed rounds. A series of hammering blows against North Korean coastal communication routes. Defense Department films from Navy gun cameras show the hard-hitting effectiveness of this airstrike, swooping down on roads, railroads, supply dumps, and coastal shipping with a withering rain of rocket and machine gun fire. Another kind of war story from South Korea, a story of kindness. GIs observe the Korean New Year with a visit to this asylum for war orphans, and they come bringing the most precious of gifts for these war-bereaved youngsters, warm clothing to shut out the bitter Korean winter. It's not just a holiday story, for warm-hearted GIs have been and are carrying on their own personal campaign to help these waifs of war. Letters home to friends and family ask for clothing in small sizes. Formal relief agencies are unable to cope with the problem of helping the many thousands of war orphans. But to our fighting men, these youngsters aren't a social problem, just good kids who deserve a break.
central front in Korea again flames with action as Chinese Reds hurl human waves against UN positions to meet massed artillery and rocket fire. 80,000 of them meet a blazing barrage. But when the smoke of battle clears, the grim toll of battle, often hand to hand, is read in the faces of men weary to the point of exhaustion. Here in the rest areas, there's a breathing spell and time out for the care of wounded. Serious cases are rushed to field hospitals. Others are given emergency treatment just behind the battle line. The Battle of Pork Chop Hill, one of the salients of the Allied line, bids fair to become one of the legends of the Korean War. In Seoul, smartly marching ROK soldiers open a ceremony in which President Syngman Rhee, with General Maxwell Taylor, presents a citation to the 8th Army. President Rhee, despite opposition to a truce that does not unify his country, has promised to collaborate with the Allies in bringing about a ceasefire after 2 weeks of conferences with Assistant Secretary of State Walter Robertson, who is greeted by Secretary Dulles as he returns to Washington to make his report to President Eisenhower. After his conference with the President and his chief, the envoy tells the press, "I want to say that we can go ahead and sign an armistice in good faith anytime the communists want to sign." He receives a well done for a difficult mission accomplished. In Korea, 3 years of combat end as United Nations and communist negotiators at Panmunjom sign a truce. The long war, undertaken to stop red aggression, is over. The enemy holds less territory than before his troops marched, but the cost has been bitter for both sides. With fighting ended, a political conference is slated to deal with the touchy problem of unifying Korea and assuring peace. Neutral observers are already present to oversee adherence to armistice terms. And in Washington, a dramatic evening press conference at the White House sets the stage as President Eisenhower formally breaks the good news to the nation, adding his counsel against over-optimism in the face of the many problems that still lie ahead.
We have won an armistice on a single battleground, not peace in the world. We may not now relax our guard nor cease our quest. Throughout the coming months, during the period of prisoner screening and exchange, and during the possibly longer period of the political conference which looks toward the unification of Korea, we and our United Nation allies must be vigilant against the possibility of untoward developments. And as we do so, we shall fervently strive to ensure that this armistice will, in fact, bring free peoples one step nearer to their goal of a world at peace.
Operation Big Switch swings into high as each day sees upwards of 400 UN prisoners of war reaching the receiving center at Panmunjom. Despite their harrowing ordeal, some summon the strength to wave as freedom nears and Allied officers await them. Some leap unaided from the trucks at the sight of Freedom Gate, but there are others not so fortunate, those who bear the testimonial of wounds and neglect in the red prison camps. Others are completely dazed and are restrained from jumping blindly, unable to comprehend it all. South Koreans, most of whom were brutally maltreated by their captors, are delirious with joy as they reach the haven of Freedom Village. It is a poignant scene with peaks of happiness followed swiftly by those bearing the indelible marks of their recent nightmare. Men who have lost limbs through barbarous neglect in the bitter cold of the Manchurian winters. Rugged Turkish soldiers whose faces mirror the horror of their treatment at the hands of the Reds. The most seriously disabled are rushed to the helicopter landing area for transfer to base hospitals. Already several hundred of the returned prisoners have been found to be in critical condition. A high percentage have been found to be suffering from tuberculosis. Contrast these wrecks of men to the North Koreans and Chinese returned by the Allies to the exchange point, well-fed, well-clothed, and defiant after months of humane treatment they received in UN prison camps. This is their gateway, where Red officers wait to greet them. Even in the moment of their liberation, the wounded show their defiance and shed the UN clothing provided them during their captivity. This is the fanaticism that is communism in Asia. Some don't even wait to arrive to start their disrobing propaganda act. Red Guards are at great pains to push the discarded garments into the gutter as soon as the prisoners have crossed the line. A short distance away at Munsan, all is in readiness to give the prisoners their real welcome back to the free world as the motorcade of ambulances rolls up to the reception center. As they pile out of the ambulances, on hand to greet them is General Maxwell Taylor, commander of the 8th Army. In Munsan, they are processed and interviewed, and Secretary of State Dulles arrives to take a hand in the proceedings and possibly to admire the splendid crop of whiskers on Corporal Cox Dwight. Secretary Dulles then personally interviews Corporal Shepard Raymond on his experiences during his captivity. They have blood-chilling tales of brutality, starvation, and incessant brainwashing to tell their officers. The nightmare is over, except possibly for 2,000 or 3,000 Americans General Mark Clark asserts are unaccounted for. Their absence casts a shadow over Operation Big Switch. Probably in all of Operation Big Switch, there was no happier or lustier prisoner of war than veteran news photographer Frank Noel, as freedom beckoned after 32 months of imprisonment, much of it in solitary, for attempted escapes. Pappy is happy. But a more somber note enters the picture at Travis Air Force Base in California, as 17 prisoners arrive suffering from tuberculosis or mental ailments. A mother sheds tears of gladness and sadness over Marine Private Graham, one of the group, the first to reach the United States following the truce. They are the first living reminders of the barbarous treatment suffered by Americans in red prison camps. Broken in mind, undermined in body, they are but part of the price that was Korea.
An armistice, however, is only a ceasefire, not peace. And in this divided nation, the need is for constant watchfulness. Unending preparedness still remains and may continue for years to come. This is true anywhere on Earth where people face an aggressor.